Alright, today I'll be explaining how to do explosions using physics in GameMaker Studio 2. First, I just changed the background color to make it more visually appealing, because I don't want my eyes to be basically blinded by the black. I just do that every time. Then I enable physics, of course, and disable the gravity for now. And now I just create folders, because I have to keep track of everything and I highly recommend it. It's just basically cleaning stuff up. It's like clean code, it's pretty important. If you don't want to do it, don't do it, but I always do it. Obviously, you do the same for scripts and sprites and everything if you do that. So there I just create a parent. Parents are basically parents, they keep track of their children. And if you access one parent, you can access all children at once. Basically, that's a pretty bad explanation, but it will suffice for the sake of this tutorial. Now I just create script groups as well, because when I create object groups, I need script groups as well. Scripts are like functions in every other programming language, like C# or C++, or basically anything else. Functions in GameMaker are stuff like move, bounce, all, or display, get width, I can't talk, or yeah, move, bounce, all. It's basically the stuff you type for your code and where you set brackets behind, and fill arguments in case you need arguments. So now we just create our sprite hierarchy, in this case 2 box sprites, solids and dynamic as well, because we have 2 types of boxes. We just make them solid colored, because I don't want to make new sprites for this. Yeah, I always put SPR in front of my sprites. Other people use S or sprite, but I use just SPR because that's easier and easier to read. Right, let's just create the second sprite. We just fill it in blue because that's a nice color and I like it. You can obviously use your own sprites or anything. I don't really care what you use there. So once you're done adding your sprites, you add objects. In this case, obj box solid and obj box dynamic. You can create how many objects you want. Just assign the sprite. And a sprite is, I forgot to explain that, sprite is basically an image and the object uses that image to display itself. So those objects have sprites and our parent doesn't have sprite. So GameMaker shows this question mark for no sprite. But you don't place parents down usually, unless you really need them. I don't place them down most of the time. Alright, let's create our dynamic object now. Object box dynamic. Then we can assign the sprite as well. And then we will have the first part done. It's pretty easy. And it requires no coding at all. So everyone should be able to do that. Let's just place down a few boxes. A few heavy boxes. Like Bob Ross. But not place them down like that for the bottom, just stretch them out. That's less performance heavy. Well, yeah, just stretch them out for stuff like that. And once you're done placing your boxes, I just placed them down pretty randomly, you hit the uses physics button that enables the object to use physics. I also changed the gravity Y again because we need that for testing purposes. Just set everything like in that object. Density 0 means like it has no density, it isn't affected by gravity, or it can't rotate. So if you set everything to that, obj solid should be fine. Then you add, then you click modify collision shape. You just set it to that what I had there. That's pretty easy. And then you do the same for OJ dynamic, except you set density to 1. Yeah, then you just modify the collision shape, and then you can hit play for the first time. Remember to set gravity to 10 again. Now the boxes fall. There's those little cracks, but those are just visual glitches. We can fix them later on. Alright, now we need to add an explosion sprite. I already finished mine, so, well, an earlier project, so there's no need for me to actually make a new one, but you'll have to make a new one or download one. I'll just quickly import it and then I'll use it. You can check Saint 11 or basically any other tutorial on YouTube for it. I've seen Heartbeast having one as well, so definitely check those out. So once you're done exporting your sprite or importing, it'll look somewhat like that. That's just a sprite animation, and you'll be ready to use it as soon as you have it. Now you create a new group called VFX. There you create a new object called OJ_VFX explosion. Now the way I'm going to handle explosions is not the best, but it's good enough for the sake of this tutorial. You can always just create bigger explosion sprites or anything else, but I'm just going to create a lot of objects. So now you make a new event. It's going to be the end animation event. And when the animation ends, we want the object to delete itself. So we type instance destroy. And that's it. That's enough code for this object. Now you can just place them down to test if it works properly. Hit play. And it works, but there's no explosion effect yet in the case of pushing everything away. So we're going to work on that later on, but for now we're just going to make the visuals. So this is the first time we're writing more than one line of code, so we need to organize it. We type those slashes and add params. This basically means the script tells us what value needs to go there when we call it. It's like when you use any function, then there's this tiny little box saying you need, I don't know, the x coordinate there. Then we type var xx equals argument 0. You can use brackets like in an array as well, but I just use argument 0. Then you do the same for every other param. And yeah, when you're done with that, you can start coding the rest. So once you've finished like entering all your variables, you can start by making a for loop. A for loop is basically a loop that loops until a certain condition is met, like a while loop, except it, well, it can do infinite. Yeah, it's different because you have access to the current loop. It's like using a while loop and then adding a variable inside the while loop again. Yeah. So you just indent that. I have to do this now in the tutorial, but I never indent actually. So now you add a new variable called _xx and you use length_dir functions there. Length_dir functions are like math simplified. It's trigonometry, and yeah, you'll have to use it to make a circular shape now. You use the variable range inside that for the length, and now the important part to make a circle is irandom 360. This chooses a random direction and on a scale from 0 to 360. And that's basically what we want. Now you just change it to underscore yy and length to your y, and then you're good to use those variables. Now you use instance create depth. In this case, I'm always told to not use it, but I found my own way of using it, so I'll just do that. The thing with instance create depth is you create a new layer each time you use a new depth, and this is pretty performance heavy in GameMaker, so you don't really want that. I mean, it's not like you lose 100 frames the instant you use it, but it can drop your frame rate. So you just do the same I did. I'll use that layers.vfx later on, so you don't have to worry about that. So now you're done with that piece of code for now. So now we're gonna work on the apply force script. Once you're done setting up your variables in the apply force script, you're gonna use the with statement for the first time with this code. With is basically using, it does a certain action with the object you specify, in this case the parent, so we have access to all our dynamic objects. So this code is going to be the first bit of more complicated code to understand maybe, but it's actually pretty simple once you get it done. So we're going to have if statement, and it checks if the distance to the object we're getting is greater than our range times 1.5, 2. You can modify it however you want. You can just not multiply it at all as well. But it's basically checking if it's smaller than our radius. It does this. This just keeps objects from outside the radius from reacting to the explosion. You don't want your object that's 5 kilometers away to get affected by a tiny explosion. So now you initialize the distance variable. It's basically the same for the first part, and then you add this +1 at the end. This just keeps it from not being 0. So because you can't divide by 0 in GameMaker and in general, unless you're doing math that we don't need for this code. So once you got this line, you're ready to use another length dir function. We're gonna call the variable x dir, and it's gonna use length dir, and it's gonna divide the force by the distance. That just makes force drop off basically, so the objects get pushed away depending on the distance. That's why distance can't be 0 as well. Now it's point direction that gets the direction of the point you enter to the point, to the other point you enter basically. So it's like the irandom thing we entered, except it's not random. Then you multiply it by -1 to have an inverse effect, because you don't want it to be drawn towards the center. So now you use the first physics function. It's physics apply force, and that just applies the force we just specified to the object. And that's it. Now we need to call the apply force function properly, and that's what the params commands, or whatever that is, are for. See this like box at the bottom above the output console, and that tells you what you have to input there. It just tells you the arguments of the function you need. Right, so now we're gonna create a new group for the managers. In this case, we're just gonna use a manager to get the mouse position and the clicking stuff down. So in the manager, you initialize a new variable called force. We set it to 5,000. You can set it to whatever you want, but 5,000 works fine for me. I used 1,000 in another project, so you can use whatever you want, but the force is basically the force your explosion has. So there you check for the mouse button thing. Excuse the car in the background. You can of course use a mouse, global mouse down even as well, but I'm using code because that's cleaner. And then you just put the explode script there. You enter the variables, in this case a mouse X and mouse Y, and then the radius and the amount and the force. Yeah, that's it. Except there I forgot to add one variable. So it's gonna tell you, it's not gonna crash, it's gonna tell you. I was looking for the arrow, why it didn't show me the second variable I should have entered, but I couldn't figure it out, so I just didn't care. Now we're gonna initialize the layers thing. The layers are based on an enum. An enum is basically a collection of constants under a custom variable type, so you're gonna use it a lot once you learn programming more and program more. So in GameMaker, depths, a negative depth is actually the foreground, so that's a bit confusing at first, but you'll get used to it. So now this should work if we did everything correctly and put the manager clicking in there. But as you see, it doesn't work, and that's because we forgot one important part. It's the XX plus length, dear X. I just didn't do that on purpose because I want everyone to know how to fix that, because that frequently happens and some people don't know how to fix it. But the force isn't getting applied, and that's because the parents don't have children yet. So we go at children, trying to fix a bug. That's why there's more code than previously there. It's just some visual variety, and you can add that as well. The most important part of this is the random range, negative range, and range thing. And now it doesn't apply force, and now we have to add the parents. I mean the children to the parents, not add parents, because we have parents. So we add the children to the parents. We need to do that for both objects. Well, actually, we don't need it for the solids, but it's just we have a solids parent, so we're gonna add solids. And now it's gonna work. And now the gravity is a bit slow, but you just increase gravity. I'll do that later. But as you can see, it works perfectly fine, and it should be easy to modify. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and have fun.